So Levi, you changed over to Shadow Dancer. Why?
Why? Because it's more fun.
This is more fun than Blade Master. You did more damage as Blade Master though, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to another guide. Today I had a few people asking about the Shadow Dancer, and so Levi went ahead and swapped over because he got bored as Blade Master. Who knows when he'll go back? But anyway, I'm gonna take advantage of this moment to make a detailed guide for you for the Shadow Dancer. And so Levi, we already know that you are on Server One Scarbear, and you're in the Guild Obsidian with us. Can you explain your class description for the Shadow Dancer?
Yeah, so you're kind of that balance in between the two rogue classes. You're still pretty good in PvE, even though you're not as great as Blade Master, and you're still pretty good in PvP, even though you're not quite on the level of Spellblade.
Yeah, and something to point out about that is when you're Blade Master, you kind of like you can do PvP, but it's just kind of not fun. So the Shadow Dancer, like most classes, when they try to strike a balance between two classes, they kind of do it badly, and it's just ends up not being good at all. Is it different for the Shadow Dancer?
Yeah, because Shadow Dancer is well above average at everything.
Okay, so it actually ends up being a pretty nice balance. Good job, Slewing Entertainment. They did it. Let's talk about the strengths, like just kind of some strengths, weaknesses, or what is it? Is it mostly single target, AoE? What are we looking at
Um,
here?
so your single target is really strong. Your AoE is also really strong. You're more of a bursty class. However, there are ways to reduce the cooldown of your burst, so it ends up being a bit more consistent than Spellblade. But overall, you're primarily single target burst, but in sieges you can do some work too.
Wow. And would you say that there are any areas that they kind of have struggles in?
Yeah, I would say they're not super great against targets that have a lot of physical defense. Blade Master is pretty good against them. They're also not super great unless they're really geared. If you're not super geared, you're not going to do anything at all as this class.
That makes sense. So if you're not really geared and you want to do PVE, you say go Blade Master, and if you're not really geared and you want to do PvP, then go Spellblade.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then if you're kind of decently geared and you want to do really well in both, then Shadow Dancer's you're the way to go.
Correct.
Nice. All right, let's take a look at your mastery. So just open up your mastery, and some of this might be familiar if you watch the Blade Master guide, but just explain your mastery and why, if you did level other masteries, why you did that.
Yeah, so first of all, the main mastery you're going to be using for PvE and PvP is going to be Night Ninja. I already went over why this is super OP in the Blade Master guide, but I'll go over it again. So whenever you use your Shadow Dance is when you use your stealth mid-combat, your crit damage is increased by an extreme amount. Of course, minus tier 4, most people aren't going to be able to get there. But at tier 4 level 3 is 79.5%. I forget what it is at tier 3 level 1, which is reasonable for most people. Um, but it's still really awesome. The crit strike chances increase minus 30%. At tier 3 is going to be 25%. Movement speed is increased, so you get an additional 20% on top of the, I think, 50% it is. I'll check. We'll have to check when we're going with the skills. I actually forgot. Either way, you're just moving faster during Shadow Dance. Your Shadow Dance lasts 5 seconds longer, which is massive because this is when you're going to be doing most of your bursts. You gain additional charge of stealth, which of course is what procs your Shadow Dance. And then casting stealth or shadow dance will give you invincibility for 2 seconds. And like I said before, the invincibility is amazing. You're just invincible to everything. That's totally PvP, and there are still some uses for it in PvE.
Yeah, it's basically cheating, but it's really fun if you're the one using it.
Yeah,
Let's.
that's it.
That's it. All right, so let's take a look at your talent tree now. PvP for actually no, we'll start with PvE. Your PvE talent tree.
Yeah, for PvE, first of all, you're going to want to go with bravery, self-explanatory, vicious, self-explanatory, nothing super special like with Blade Master there. Um, Agile, self-explanatory, force release, super awesome. Just proc it before you do your burst. Try to keep it up as much as possible, which is actually kind of hard to do on this class. Sharp edge, saw blade, both really good. I'm trying the heavy into sharp edge right now because I was actually testing with builds, but normally I would go more into saw blade once you hit about 55 to 60% crit. So I actually would respec back into saw blade, but I was testing something. Then there's ruthlessness, self-explanatory, below 20%, you're doing a lot more. Sundering blade, self-explanatory. Desperate strike, once again self-explanatory, just an amazing talent. And under strategist, you want to go with cunning until you have 103% accuracy, then you can put the rest into grace. Readiness, super awesome. But unyielding will is super awesome too. I switch between these two. I think they're just really good for different purposes. Focus and precision, both really good. I have enough haste to where I don't need the focus, but if you're lower on haste, go totally into focus. I have precision just because I don't need it. And then tactical plan.
Yeah, and your tactical plan too, just kind of touch on that real quick. To proc it with this class, is it easy to do?
Absolutely. Every time you use your stealth, you're going to have this ability pop up that's called Shadow Stride, and every time you use Shadow Stride, it procs tactical plan.
Okay, yeah, and for those of you that don't know, it basically makes you do an increase. It gives you an increased chance to crit, which is very, very useful for many classes, especially if you watched Insane's Guide to the Weapon Master. That whole build is centered around tactical plan. So we'll get into the rotation and we'll get into kind of where these skills play in just a moment. But let's move. Is there any distinction between the PvE and the PvP talent tree?
Yeah, the only difference is that for PvP, you're going to want to go Call of the Week instead of Vicious. And actually, that's about it. Just go Call of the Week instead of Vicious.
Call of the Week instead of Vicious. Would you say for the CC breakability, unyielding, would you go unyielding will instead of readiness on the strategist tree? Still think they're about even? Yeah. Okay, awesome. All right, now let's open up your sigils. Take a look at your sigils. What are you doing with your crit versus haste? I know you said that you were testing something and you kind of want to reach for about 55 to 60% crit and then put the rest into crit damage. But what about haste? Where does that plan?
As far as haste goes, you're gonna want at least 40 to 45% on this class. I naturally have like 53% or something.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm definitely over the threshold. I don't need that much. I can go lower. For sigils, I have purple crit. I actually would switch these out for dex if I wasn't getting greedy and dismantle them all. So
Oof.
I would go purple dex once you get to about 60% crit rate. You can switch your purples to dex. It's just going to make you do more damage. Because Shadow Dance is going to give you a whole lot of crit rate too, so you don't need crit rate that badly. Reds,
gotcha.
of course, go dexterity. Yellows go crit rate. Blues go crit rate. You can use haste if you really need to get your haste up too, but I would say getting your crit rate to 50 to 60, preferably 60, is more important than getting your haste up.
All right, open up your gear now that you've explained those thresholds and explain to us, is there a necessity for a legendary weapon? If so, which one are you going for? And we'll just start with that.
You know what? You're in luck here because none of the legendary weapons are super necessary for this class. All of them have mediocre to weak effects compared to other classes. So none of the three are that great. But obviously, if you can afford to build up a legendary, it is going to be technically better than a legacy. So if you did that, I would suggest going for the battle axe just to have that bleed.
Okay, so go for the battle axe. And is there any, let's say, legacy item that is necessary in order to meet certain thresholds? Like maybe your offhand will say, are any of them, would you say, is like basically necessary?
Yeah, I would definitely go with the crit based ones. I have crit base on everything, except for the worm rest ring. Obviously, is a little bit more haste than crit. I would just go for as much crit as possible here.
What about let's talk about like the tier set, the tier 1, tier 2, what are we working with for the Shadow Dancer?
All right, so tier 1 and tier 2 both happen to be very amazing for Shadow. They definitely got treated quite well with tier sets. Um, Currently, I still have tier 1 Blade Master pieces just because I switched from Blade Master, but I actually did switch my tier 2 over to Shadow Dancer pieces. I'm going to pull these up right now. So for Shadow Dancer, the tier 1 set, it's going to increase our AoE skill by 50% crit damage and give it an 8% additional crit strike chance. So in sieges, you will just mow people down with this. Like, this
Wow.
is the siege set. You're one of the best siege classes in the game with this. You're great either way, but with this, you're just, like I said, mowing people down, resetting your stealth, just you're going crazy. The tier 2 Shadow Dancer set, also amazing, more single target based, is going to increase your precise strike, which is your main skill. And the 5 suit is going to give Shadow Dance, which this will actually work on all 3 rogue classes, because all 3 rogue classes use Shadow Dance. It's going to give 100% attack speed bonus and 3,000 points of armor pin, so that's awesome for a single target.
Okay, so what would you say to go for? You said the tier 1 set if you're kind of mainly focused on multi-target PvP.
Absolutely.
And then tier 2 if you're more single target based. It just really depends on what your playstyle is.
Single target or PvE, yeah.
Okay, all right, understood. Would you say that there really is any case to kind of go for both of them, or can you pick one and kind of get away with everything, so to speak, with just one set?
If you have unlimited smelting materials, go for both. But I don't think many of us do. So,
Yeah.
honestly, this is just up to your playstyle. Like, if you're really focused on these sieges, that tier 1 set's awesome. If you want to push out the most damage in PvE as you can, grab the tier 2 set.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, what about the pet? Which pet are you using? And I'm assuming that you're gonna go for a crit one that gives you passive crit damage, but I don't know.
That is correct.
That's okay.
Definitely, I'm using that Little Prince.
Little
You
Prince.
get that 1.5 haste and 5% crit damage.
Yeah, Little Prince is super good. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I am tempted to buy that Aurora with gold. I will say that is probably a really good pet. You do lose some of the main stat dexterity, but you change that haste for crit rate, which is pretty good.
Yeah, but not if you're already at like the threshold, right? The 55 to 60% crit rate.
No, you can definitely go past that. I'm just saying that needs to be your baseline.
Okay, and that's because Shadow Dance basically brings you to 100%, and anything else would be overkill when you're using Shadow Dance.
Anything over about 75 is overkill. For me, over 70 is overkill.
Okay, understood. So you use the Little Prince. Is there any like maybe alternative that you would recommend for somebody who doesn't have the means to get the Little Prince, because that's a very expensive pet as of right now?
Teddy Romy, awesome. 5% crit damage passive.
Teddy Romy, dude, Insane has that too. He likes that Teddy Romy. All right,
Teddy Romy is quite good.
You get yourself a little cute Teddy Romy.
If you can't get Teddy Romy either, then the other one I would suggest is Bubbles. Bubbles is still really good.
Bubble or Bubbles?
Okay.
I forgot. It's okay.
I want the audience to look right here. Right here is called Bubbles, and then down here is called Bubbles. So either way,
it wouldn't be the first time.
About when you watch the video.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that this company pulled a fast one on us. Like, did you know that my class is actually called a Frost Whisperer with an RER at the end?
Call it that.
But everywhere else it's called Frost Whisper. But when you look at the description, there's literally an extra ER. I'm confused. Okay, let's go to your artifacts. Open up your artifacts, and I know you kind of alluded to this before, but just literally go through each of them. Explain the main priority.
I would say the main priority. First of all, I guess I'll start from the bottom, going all the way up. Because the best one is Desperate Strike. Desperate Strike's awesome. Just that constant increase in damage. Next is going to be All the other 4 you can get the same. So I'll say priority. You're definitely want to go with force release. Force release is super good. I have ruthlessness. Ruthlessness is super good. But actually, more important than getting good ruthlessness rolls is getting good saw blade rolls. Saw blade is amazing for this class. Sharp edge is good if your crit's low. So those top line stats are super important. The saw blade, if you can get +5 on it and you don't even have something on the bottom, it's still super good.
Let's say that it's somebody who's like starting over and they just have nothing on their rolls. What would you say they should go for first? Like a force release or the crit damage, the saw blade crit damage? Both of them are equally as important, would you say, for this class?
You definitely want to get your force release up. If you get a really good saw blade or sharp edge with a tactical plan, that's also pretty good, because generally early on you're not going to have a really high crit rate. So getting that extra from tactical plan is awesome. Once you get your crit rate really high, it's not that useful. So I'd say definitely prioritize force release first. It just makes your whole burst do damage if you proc it first.
Do you have an additional set for PvP, or does it really not matter with your artifacts? Do you just kind of roll with the same set?
I just use the same set. Honestly, like, it's way too much of an investment to go for 2 sets, and that's coming from me.
Yeah, that's coming from, yeah, okay. Dude, somebody saw your crowns in my previous video and they're like, bloody hell. They made me laugh so
see it
hard.
again here.
Yeah, they're gonna see it again here. Let's look at your skills. Show us, just open up your skills. First and foremost, I want you to just go through each skill. Let's assume that our viewers can read the skills for themselves, so don't worry about percentages, but just explain kind of what each of these do. Like, this is a single target attack, etc. And then go through it quickly once, and then we'll talk about the priority and the glyphs after that. Okay, so let's discuss your skills. We're gonna get into the rotation and the leveling priority, etc. in just a minute, but first, can you just kind of show us, for those of you who really aren't familiar with this class, what each of these skills do and what they look like, just so we can get understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. Your first skill is going to be precise strike. You're going to be using this more than any other skill, and it attacks 3 times, does a decent amount of damage, builds malice. Your next skill is going to be go for the throat. You can use it with any amount of malice. It's more optimal at 5. It looks like this. It just does a lot of damage. Your next skill is going to be Phantom Slice. It stuns the target for 5 seconds and applies a bleed. It looks like that. They get stunned for 5 seconds. Pretty awesome. Your next skill is going to be your Lethal Throw. It's awesome for AoE. You get to throw ninja stars around. Your last skill on the bar is going to be Stealth. Mid-combat, it gives Shadow Dance. You turn blue. It gives you your Shadow Stride back. Gives you a lot of buffs that we discussed earlier. Then the first skill we're going to talk about, I think they're called reaction skills, the one that appear above your bar when you're mid-combat. The first one we're going to talk about is Shadow Assault. You see I walked back here because it will launch you at the target, do a little bit of damage, and then cast a Go for the Throat. As you saw there, it casts a full 5 Malice Go for the Throat.
Oh, wow.
The last reaction skill is going to be Shadow Stride. See, if I use my Stealth, it shows up. You just teleport behind the target, it stuns the target, and it deals damage. It also applies a little bleed. And then the ultimate, as you can see here, is going to, it's actually a really strong ultimate. It's going to completely fill my malice. It's going to reset, you see it reset my stealth, but it actually resets all your cooldowns, reset my Shadow Assault too. And then it will give me a free Shadow Assault or free Go for the Throat. Actually, I used it a little too late. Either way, you get a free one.
Dude, that looks like it's gonna be crazy in like Sigils. Oh yeah, so you're just mowing people down and then you pop your ultimate, reset everything, and just throw ninja stars at them and just kill them again. Like that's
that's
crazy.
what happens whenever you don't have any stealth charges left and you can't keep going immune. You just pop your ult, get the stealth charge.
and we'll go into that in just a moment. Dude, thank you for that. I actually think that was really helpful to like actually see the skills in action, because now we're gonna do that thing that some people kind of have a hard time following if you don't know what the skills do, and that is opening your skills. So open your skills. First thing, one thing you didn't touch on was the passive. So can you just explain the passive briefly to us before we talk about the skills?
Yeah, absolutely. The passive is far simpler for this class in Blade Master. Thank you so much for that. So your auto attacks have a chance to generate 1 malice. I don't actually know what the percent chance is. It doesn't tell us, but it seems to happen pretty often. For every 2 malice spent on your finishing moves, that is go for the throat and phantom slice. Those are your 2 finishing moves. You regenerate 2 energy, and you also lower the cooldown on stealth by 1 second. So say you cost 4 malice or 5 malice, go for the throat. That's lowering your the cooldown on stealth by 2 seconds, and it adds up. It helps you get your burst off more often. You also deal 6% increased damage to targets affected by the bleed from Phantom Slice. So using your go for the throat or just anything after you put that bleed on there, you're just doing more damage.
Yeah, that's a lot simpler than the Blade Master passive.
Absolutely.
But it's still good to know. All right, let's move into the actual skills themselves. You already went over what each of them do. Can you explain the leveling priority? What are we trying to level first?
You're definitely going to want to be going to get, like I said, in the Blade Master, for all the rogues, you want to get your stealth to level 6, so you can get this engraving called Mighty Power. Super important. Then you can kind of evenly level everything else up to 6. I would say getting Precise Strike up, then go for the throat, and then Phantom Slice should be your priority after that. Like, probably on par with go for the throat.
And what about for like leveling up to like 9 and 10? Whenever if you're lucky enough to get souls, which skills are like those which you need to be maxed out first after you get your stealth to 6?
First of all, Precise Strike is going to be most of your damage. It ends up in a long fight being the most beneficial to get to 10 first. If you're more PvP about burst, you can go for the throat, or if you're caring about Sigils and you have the tier 1 set, lethal throw is the best. But in general, I'm going to focus on single target, PvE or PvP, Precise Strike is good, then go for the throat, then Phantom Slice.
Okay, good. Yeah, it doesn't really sound like it's a huge deal. So even if you kind of prioritize other skills, it's not gonna gimp you, so to speak, as long as you're keeping them up high, like Precise Strike up high. That's pretty simple. What about the glyphs? You already explained level 6 Mighty Power for the stealth, but what glyphs are you using for all of these, and do they change based upon your environment, PvE or PvP?
Yeah, so in PvP, Sharp is always the best for Precise. I use it for PvE too because I have a lot of haste. If your haste is low, Control is going to be better. Go for the throat. I use Sharp because when you get the extra crit rate from the Shadow Dance, having that extra 5% damage is pretty awesome. It helps. Phantom Slice, Sharp is always going to be the best. It actually adds a lot of damage. So if you're going to get Sharp on something first, I would suggest Phantom Slice. Lethal Throw, Sharp is the best. You can go Cleave if you're going against a lot of enemies, but I still think Sharp is better just so you can more reliably get kills. Stealth, Mighty Power all the way. There's not even an argument for the other two. Shadow Stride for PvE, Sharp for PvP. Assault, I actually need to unlock that now. I just swapped to oh, I'm still in combat. Either way, PvP Assault, PvE Sharp.
Okay.
And Shadow Assault, Sharp. The other two are useful, but Sharp is still going to be the best. So as you can tell, that the glyphs are really expensive for this class.
But definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely worth it.
Oh yeah, if you've
all the rogues, it's rough.
But yeah, I mean, if you've been playing the game for any amount of time, like that's really not that difficult to get, and it's something that gives you something to work towards. So I think that's reasonable.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to say about? I normally don't do this because I don't like talking about content that you kind of have to pay for or that people have difficulty getting. But can you just discuss maybe emblems or charms in the runes? We'll just do those really quick.
Yeah, honestly, runes just 14s on everything is going to be the best for every class.
The number 14 riddle, you mean?
Yeah, the number 14 riddle all the way across. The other ones just go with what you can. Like, don't worry about it too much. Charms and emblems, it also doesn't really matter. You just want to go with your main stat, which is going to be dexterity. Honestly, I don't see a reason to talk about them that much. Just go get as much dexterity on them as you can. It's going to be rough if you're not able to spend. And obviously, Quantum Shield is going to be the best skill.
Yeah, and you happen to have it. We won't go into it again just because it's so it's unreachable at this point, to be honest with you, with the average player. I will make a video in the future that will kind of detail and discuss how to work with these items, but for right now I'm just going to leave it out. I think it's better to do that.
I'm actually pretty sure I saw a comment on your video from someone saying thank you for not dwelling on these pay to win things.
Yeah, okay. So for that guy, I got you. Now that we understand the skills, and again, thank you for showing us what they do and explaining the glyph priority and the leveling priority. Show us your rotation. This is what everybody wants to see. So go to the dummies, and what you can do is you can just full on do one rotation. Let's say PvE single target. Okay, just do it first, and then you can just kind of go. Right? Okay. Explain it slowly, and then we'll put it all together. So explain what you're doing. Just explain it and do it one thing at a time, and then we'll reset and put it all together and see what you can do.
All right, now here's where this class gets really interesting, because I think it has the most complicated rotation out of any class in the game. Actually, I don't think, I know it does. There's nothing that comes even close to Shadow Dancer.
That's why you like it so much, yeah?
Yeah, I saw in another YouTuber's video, he was saying Shadow Dancer is bad, bottom tier. And honestly, I think that's just because he hasn't seen it played right. It's hard to play right, and if you play it bad, it's horrible. But if it's played well, it's up there. It's really, really strong. And hopefully I can help show that today. Okay, so first of all, you're gonna want to use stealth. Then you're gonna want to use shadow assault. Then you can interrupt the animation with shadow stride, and then you can use your phantom slice to apply the bleed. And then you can use your go for the throat. Then you're going to want to use precise strike 3 times, and then another go for the throat. The reason you do 3 and don't get it to 5 stacks is because if you do more than that, then your stealth would generally run off, and the go for the throat damage would be wasted. That's your main opener. You're just gonna usually do that whenever you have 9 to 10 malice. Whenever whenever your stealth is on cooldown, you're just going to be spamming precise strike, go for the throats. Whenever you don't have stealth and you do have your ultimate, or at the end of your last stealth, press your ultimate, use shadow stride, and then you can go into your combo again. And I know it's a lot to explain. Hopefully whenever I show it laid out, it'll be easier to understand.
Yeah, and I'll actually show the whole thing and slow it down. Well, it's good because we want to understand the mindset behind what you're doing, and then when you actually show it, that's totally fine. So all right, so was that the whole rotation? You want to show it now in full speed?
Yeah, I'll show it now.
Okay, yeah, so what do you have to say about that? I'm going to play it right now, just kind of in slow motion. So can you just discuss a little bit about it while people are kind of watching it, priorities, things like that?
So first of all, if you notice, every time I use my Shadow Dance, I don't do the exact same thing I described before, because you can't. You'll have your Shadow Assault on cooldown, you'll have your Phantom Slice on cooldown. In that cases, you can basically just use a couple Go for the Throats, like 3 Go for the Throats during the Shadow Dance and a bunch of Precise Strikes. Whenever you use your alt, you're gonna want to go ahead, if your Phantom Slice bleed is up, which it usually will be, go ahead and just use Shadow Assault and 2 Go for the Throats during your stealth, and then go ahead and use the bleed on the next stealth charge. It also a little bit depends on luck from your auto attacks if you're going to get that malice. So sometimes your 3rd Go for the Throat will be at 4 stacks, sometimes it'll be at 3 stacks if you're really unlucky, and sometimes you'll have like 3 stacks to spare by the end. I know this sounds like gibberish to you, Dante, but hopefully our Shadow Dancers can understand.
No, it doesn't. It's helpful to see it too, so that's really helpful.
No,
Thank you.
Definitely. And you're just gonna want to use your alt as much as you can, just so it can start recharging again. A lot of your damage comes from your alt. If it is possible for you to get a emblem that gives you the soul power increase when you take damage, it's super awesome for everything, but specifically PvE. You'll get your alt back a lot more and a lot faster, and that just overall increases your damage. But honestly, I would say play this video back. If you're watching on YouTube, play it back in 0.25 speed or something, because this is really where a lot of Shadow Dancers miss the mark, is on the rotation. It's super complicated, but if you optimize it, you're going to be an amazing DPS.
Awesome. Yeah, and they're checking out the slow motion now. So again, just go back and watch it, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of decipher what he's doing. He's already kind of briefly explained it, but really just watching something over and over and over is the way to learn it. So I hope that was helpful.
The hard thing about explaining the rotation for this class is that there is no set rotation that you're going to do every time. There isn't even a set rotation you're going to do for every burst you have. But there is that priorities. Like I said, the priority is your Shadow Assault, you're going to want to use it when it's up. Your Phantom Sights, you're going to want to keep up as much as possible and use during Shadow Dance. And then after that, just go for the Throats to fill it in.
Okay, sounds good. Now, is there any distinction and difference between the PvE rotation for single target and multi-target or AoE? So what are you weaving in there when there's like a big... Go to that stack of dummies, the big stack, and show us what you do. Yeah.
So I'll show you what you do. You just basically... Here, I'll go to this one. You it's actually super complicated. You press this skill, it's called Lethal Throw, and then you just keep pressing it. You press it more, and then you keep pressing Stealth, and then you keep getting kills and resetting your Stealth.
That's AoE. So Lethal Throw, it actually does AoE damage?
Yeah. That's why you wreck people in Sigils.
That's you throwing the Ninja Star?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. It's a Ninja Star with a bomb attached to it. That's crazy. Okay, easy enough, Levi. Thank you. What about for PvP? Is there any difference, or what are you doing in PvP to take targets down as quickly as possible?
All right. So in PvP, obviously you're gonna want to go for the squishies. It doesn't matter if they're physical or magic damage. This class is kind of balanced. In that regard, you don't hard counter any, but you're good against all squishies. Let me get out of combat so I can start in stealth here. Generally, you're gonna want to jump on them with Shadow Stride, and then even though I don't have the tier 1 set, I like to use a Lethal Throw right after, just in case there's like a rogue hiding around him. It'll take him out of stealth. So I'll jump on them, Lethal Throw, and then enter my Shadow Dance, and then I'll Shadow Assault, and then Shadow Assault, Shadow Stride, and go for the throat. So I'll show that here real quick. Basically, that was it. As you can see, well over 300k DPS burst combo.
Jeez.
That's just how you take one person out real quick. and it works really well because you'll do the Shadow Assault, animation cancel with Shadow Stride, and then go for the throat, and it's almost instant burst. It's probably greater than Spellblade burst on one target. You just can't do it back to back to back.
Wow. Yeah. Spellblade can do it back to back to back, but that's good for. Okay, so highlight a target, right? You want to take them down, and then just coordinate with your teammates, burst them down, and you're pretty much going to get a guaranteed kill there as a Shadow Dancer.
Yep.
All right, sick, dude. Anything else you want to say about PvP while we're talking about it?
Yeah, in Sieges, what I showed you on that multi-target dummy or whatever, that's just what you want to do. I will also like to mention in Sieges, you're going to want to use your stealth to get that 2 seconds of immunity, and just keep spamming that and your lethal throw, because ideally what's going to happen is you're going to keep getting kills to reset your stealth, and you're going to be able to keep using stealth to stay invincible. So sometimes you'll find yourself staying invincible for like 20 seconds until you kill a group of 15 people. Like it's really insane what this class can do sometimes.
Yeah, I was actually seeing you keep up when you were a Shadow Dancer. When I was a Frost Whisperer, you were getting like kind of the same amount of kills that I was. I was really surprised, actually.
Shadow Dancer is a top tier siege class. Not many people would think it, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, it's definitely not obvious on the face of it. Okay, wonderful, Levi. I really enjoyed doing guides with you, man. I think that the viewers appreciate it, and it just goes really smoothly. So I just want to thank you for your time and for coming on and explaining the Shadow Dancer to us. Is there anything that you want to say before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I had a good time here sharing my thoughts with you. I really hope this will help. More than anything, I hope this will help people see that Shadow Dancer is a very, very viable class. One more thing I would actually like to mention that I didn't earlier, just before I forget, is your damage in a raid or in a dungeon actually will be a lot higher, because the crit damage from the healer buffs is actually a direct increase to you, since you're almost always critting. So it's actually a massive buff. Like, bards are amazing for this class. I guess that's just kind of what I wanted to say.
So bards are your best friends.
Oh yeah.
not like on the Blade Master.
I just ran away from the bards, but on Shadow Dancer you want all the bards. I know I kind of went off topic here a little bit, but
no, that's good to know, dude. So yeah. people that are playing this class, they want to know, like, okay, how can I maximize what I'm doing here? So if you're a Blade Master, run away from the bards, stick to the Saints and the Vampires, and if you are a Shadow Dancer, you hug those bards. You see that green song going out. 50% crit damage. 50% crit damage.
That's juicy, dude. That's just a 50% damage increase, man. It's crazy.
Well, Levi, thank you so much for coming on, man. And so I appreciate this. And if you guys did enjoy, please like and share the video with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, enjoy your day.